is kicking up big time.
Right.
And simultaneously, there's this awful thing that's hitting the Carolinas. And also, simultaneously with that, a big typhoon, which hurricane.
And the connection here,
slammed Matt, the Philippines, Hong Kong, mainland China.
And Matt, the connection here is that our federal government just pulled out of the Paris agreements, and they have decimated our EPA and our other departments that protect from climate change and study climate change. And this is part of what's helping to cause these really dramatic, believe it or not, changes in our weather systems. And it's causing the climate to heat up so that wildfires are much more difficult to put out. And, if you poison your water, where are you going to go to get water to put out the fires? It's not going to make people sick afterwards.
Yeah. And what is Trump doing about it? Well, okay, he's doing the following. In addition to pulling the U.S. out of the treaty conventions, is also, one, taking money from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is supposed to be the federal first responders to fund all the other first responders. He's taking that money and putting it into building more lovely ICE concentration camps, hiring the Einsatzgruppen of the ICE, et cetera, et cetera. That's one thing he's doing. And two, now he's securing access to the emergency broadcast system. So now Trump can tweet on the emergency broadcast system. Okay, you thought he was fun on Twitter. Well, you get these emergency alerts from Trump. Okay, what kind of emergency is Trump going to declare over that? Well, he's got a problem, which may turn into an emergency for him very quickly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that is the reports that are coming in that his own administration is isolating him, is quarantining him, is preventing him from looking at certain things and, trying to keep him from doing certain things. And he may press the panic button on that. But what if they take that button away from it? Okay. He's demanding access to the emergency broadcast system. What if something else comes over the emergency broadcast system to the effect that the emergency broadcast is from the Homeland Security Agency, that it has come to the conclusion that it must seize control of communications via the emergency broadcast system, in conjunction with the other unelected council, the National Security Council, which has the foreign ambit. Then you have a situation in which there is the possibility of a coup, very similar to the way it happened in the Soviet Union, that brought down the Soviet Union in a last-ditch attempt to save the USSR, which it didn't. All it did was to doom it. Okay, and that's when, out of nowhere, this outfit called the Extraordinary Commission, or CHECA, of the emergency situation in the USSR, a bunch of national security heads briefly took over communications and announced that they had basically deposed Gorbachev.
Matt, I'm sorry. What is that buzz on your end?
What is what?
What is the buzz that's coming from your end every once in a while?
Oh, that's probably messages coming in, and they buzz me.
Yeah, would be great if you could silence the buzz.
Well, if I silence the buzz, I'll end up silencing you in the process.
Oh,
it's
okay.
On the same system.
I see.
Sorry about that. But anyways, that happened in the Soviet Union. That out of nowhere, the defense minister and the chair of the KGB and all this conspired with somebody they named as Vice President Gennady Yanayev, I think it was. And a very similar thing happened in Caracas with the very equally brief deposing of President Chavez. Okay. And that lasted 2 days. The coup in the Soviet Union lasted 2 or 3 days. But even though both coups failed, the results were totally opposite. Okay. Gorbachev's presidency was ended, as was the country of which he was president, the USSR. Okay. When the presidents of the republics got together and exercised their constitutional right, which they had under the Soviet Constitution to secede, it says, we're exercising that right. We are no longer part of the Soviet Union. It was the big four. Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. Without them, there is no Soviet Union. And so they dissolved it. And the Soviet flag was lowered the first, for the last time, Christmas Eve, and the various national flags, the Russian tricolor in Moscow and the others in the other republics, were raised in its stead. When Chavez was briefly overthrown and the Venezuelan people reacted like the Soviet people did and reinstated him, it strengthened his presidency. It didn't end it like it did with Gorbachev. It strengthened it. So it's a real crapshoot if they try this in the United States. Okay, and by they I mean 2 unelected organs, the Homeland Security Council, which actually runs the Department of Homeland Security and is chaired by the Secretary of Homeland Security and the President, and the National Security Council, which is also chaired by the President. If they meet without him and take that Twitter feed to the Emergency Broadcast Network from him, then we have a coup here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So do we want to be in the U.S. when that happens? Okay. Do we even want to be in the U.S. when Trump turns the emergency broadcast system into another Twitter feed for him?
I don't want to be in the U.S. right now.
Yeah, neither do I. And it's interesting that it's the other side that's pushing us into independence. Mm-hmm. And that's a very common occurrence. Historically. That is how the U.S. got its independence, was the Crown pushed it into that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Exactly. The Crown pushed it into that.
And not only
and that. Again, that was the story of our independence when Lopez de Santa Anna pushed us into independence when he revoked the autonomy of the Mexican states.
Not only that, Matt, but when I look at us saying publicly, any of us who say it, that, we here in California want to be independent, we want to secede, I see a lot of responses on Capitol Hill from a lot of politicians going, well, yay, don't let the door slam you on the behind on your way out.
Uh-huh.
And they're saying
there are people that are saying that. That's true.
Yeah, they're saying horrible
things. There are others that they know something. They know that California is the economic engine of the U.S.
Right.
There are only 4 other countries with economies bigger than California. Mm-hmm. The U.S. itself, of course, China, which will have a bigger economy than the U.S. if we would draw ours from it. Germany and Japan. We passed the UK. We're bigger than Russia as far as the economy goes.
Right.
That's astonishing.
Also,
our economy is bigger than the Russian economy.
Also,
far larger.
Also, we supply a lot of the world's meat, dairy, and produce.
Yeah. We are an agricultural powerhouse.
Right. Including to the U.S. We supply a lot of theirs, too.
Yes, we supply a lot to the U.S. We supply a lot of automobiles, but that shut down. But we still are an aerospace giant. And who doesn't watch and copy and learn from Hollywood films and television productions out of Burbank and all that sort of thing?
And we have Silicon Valley.
Yes, that's right. Silicon Valley is here. There are other such centers around the world now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But these gazillionaires, they're based here. Apple,
Because California, they're
Microsoft,
based here because California has the best
Facebook.
weather. They're all based here. The rich people are all here because California has the best weather.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
We're like they call our climate Mediterranean, which is why actual Mediterraneans, Italians, came here and founded towns like, they planted vineyards in the Napa Valley. They found towns like Fontana, which is Italian, not Spanish, and Rialto, which is named after.
There are even little towns in San Francisco that are named things like Little Italy and Chinatown and Japantown because they all wanted to come here for the weather. And for the opportunities that we promised. We promised, that everyone can have this American dream. And then instead of making good on that promise, we discriminated against them all.
Mm-hmm. Do you know that San Bernardino is actually named after a town in Italian Switzerland?
Did not know that.
Yeah, it's not Spanish. It sounds like it, but it's been adopted as a Spanish name, but it's actually Italian. The first San Bernardino is this little dot of a ski resort that once upon a time, and I think it still does, had a monastery there. And the monks would study at the monastery, then they would go out and they would establish missions in places that were geographically similar to where San Bernardino is in the canton of Graubünden in Switzerland, the last, most diverse and largest canton in Switzerland, by the way. So they would go out from Graubünden, from that San Bernardino, and they would establish a little mission here and there, and they would say, hey, this reminds me of San Bernardino. Ta-da! You got it. Okay? And so ours was like one of the first. There's at the base of the mountain where the Teleférico goes, that's the mountain range between Caracas and the Caribbean. There's another San Bernardino. There's San Bernardinos in Mexico, etc.
Matt, you just reminded me, Matt. There is a university in San Francisco that has a Junipero Serra building. It's named after him, and they're going to take his name off that building now because of the way he treated the indigenous peoples.
Oh, yes. Junipero Serra, the saint of smallpox. There was a Cahuilla scholar at UCR that reminded us that you go to the missions and you look in the registry of dead people there. Okay. You look who's actually buried there, and two things leap out at you. One is that most of them are indigenous. The big Victorian tombstones don't tell half the story.
Right.
Okay, most of the people buried there are indigenous, and they have all those registries, save one, and that was at San Luis Rey, which I think was destroyed in a fire. But they have all the other registries, so they can look, open the registry and says, hey, here's who's actually buried there. One, most of them are indigenous. Two, they're really young. I mean, kids, most of them. They died of smallpox.
Right.
Okay. This was the wonderful gift, wonderful civilizing gift that this Junipero Serra brought to them. Smallpox, and, it killed most of them all, actually.
Right. There are some who say, Matt, there are some who say actually that a lot of us gave gifts of blankets that we knew were infected with smallpox to our indigenous locals.
Yes, that was under Yankee sovereignty. Okay. The gift that keeps on giving was first given by the Spaniards, a lot of times unintentionally. But then the Yankees turned it into deliberate policy and gave out these smallpox-infested blankets.
Right, germ warfare.
But there are some reminders of the fact that this is indigenous land that refused to go away. And one I grew up in the shadow of, literally. The Arrowhead. Ever seen it? In San Bernardino?
No, I haven't.
On where the Arrowhead Springs are at, which was as sacred to the people of the Pines is Zamzam Spring is to Muslims.